Recording, we'll kick things off. All right, I don't have my bell, so ding! Welcome to the Bloomington Rotary's weekly celebration of service for May 18th, 2021. I'm your current president, Ashley Wesley. Thank you for being here. Please show the flag for 15 seconds of respectful silence. We ask that you remain on mute and take this time to personally reflect. Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce Raj Shadawi, who will be offering our reflection today.
Thank you, President Ashley. Henry Bacon of Illinois and Daniel Chester French of Berkshire, Massachusetts. Two names. None of them is a household name, not recognizable in the early 1900s. And possibly many of us don't know who they are. These two Americans worked together for 7 years. They produce for us a lasting history on the nation, then, now, and for a future generation. Henry was an architect from Illinois, and Daniel was a sculptor from Massachusetts. They worked for 7 years, and they revealed their product Memorial Day 1922 in Washington, D.C. What they reveal is the majestic Lincoln Memorial. On that Memorial Day, about 75,000 people attended the ceremony. And President Warren Harding was prepared to receive the monument on behalf of the American people from the Chief Justice of the United States and the ex-president, Mr. William Taft. In addition to all the crowd of 75,000, there was distinguished gentleman, a gray hair, 79 years old. His name is Robert Lincoln. And Robert was the only surviving son of President Lincoln. In one corner sat the two unknown people, Daniel Chester French and Henry Bacon. The country went through many stages to honor President Lincoln, but they couldn't come across any concrete plan. Started 2-3 years after his death, during the late 1800s, and nothing happened due. Congress failed to allocate budget for the memorial the president deserved, partly because some Southern politicians, they did not believe that spending money on the emancipator is money well spent. In the 1911 and the centennial of President Lincoln's birth, Congress put together a deal. They established Lincoln Memorial Commission, run it by the politician and society at large. Various ideas came out, from building a highway, name it Lincoln, build a statue in the center of Washington or Gettysburg or Richmond, etc. Finally, the vision which was put together back in the 1800s to build a national mall came to life. They decided to build a memorial for Lincoln on the west bank of the Potomac River in Washington, D.C. Inside it, there will be a statue for the president. William Taft, in his last week of presidency, 1913, signed a bill to spend $2 million to build the memorial and ask and delegate Mr. Henry Bacon to be the Illinois man, land of Lincoln, to be the architect, and gave him the right to hire sculptor to put the Lincoln sculpture inside. Well, and I have to read this description, is phenomenal. He designed and broke ground in February 1914. He designed a mammoth Greek-style rectangular temple inspired by the Parthenon, ringed by 36 columns, one for each state of the reunited states, which was at the time of the Lincoln death. The inside wall will be etched, inscribed the 272 words of Gettysburg Address and his second inauguration speech. There will be a colossal statues built by the statuary who is going to be picked. Well, Henry Bacon went ahead and picked up no less than Daniel Chester French. Daniel did his homework for more than a year, reading every biography on Lincoln, reading any book mentioned Lincoln, met with acquaintance of Lincoln, review all the photos of Lincoln, and at that time, apparently, when a president elected, they will make a plaster mask of his face and his hand. And he reviewed those and put them together. Finally, he decided what he wants to build. He built the largest marble structure in the United States, made from Georgia white marble, 28 pieces to be exact, 21 of them carved and assembled together, and the rest of them went inside to support the structure. His facial expression, and that is what he is proud of, and I have to read it again. He described the man's humility, his gladness and power in thought and sadness, exhausted, not burdened. His right hand left it open to receive and greet people. His left hand was closed to show his fear, his strength, and his determination. The 36 massive columns were built from the Indiana limestone, a structure he could do and last and carve. And the interior wall were made of Indiana limestone as well. Well, the statute put together in the year 1920, but unfortunately the heavy buildings settled and broke the foundation, broke the floor, and some of the stair collapsed. So it was postponed until Memorial Day of 1922, where we've been honored to receive such a memorable memorial. Well, this is my reflection for the day, honoring Memorial Day and honoring the great emancipator. Thank you.
Thank you, Raj. All right. We have a few guests with us today. We would like to introduce Jim Bright. Would you like to introduce your guest?
Thank you, President Ashley. It's my pleasure to introduce Clara Stanley from the Brown County Rotary Club. Clara is passionate about community service and recently headed up a project for a super cleanup of the TC Steel property. So welcome, Clara Stanley.
Hi, everybody. I'm Clara. My Korean name is Hyunju. I'm Korean, but the people call me Clara as my nickname. And I'm married to Richard Stanley Jr., so my last name is Stanley. So good to see everybody. I had a really great time listening to Jim's guest speaker when he introduced the one scholar to us. And then we got to know each other, and Jim really generously and kindly invited me to join your room, join your meeting. So I'm very honored to be with you. Thank you so much.
Okay, great to have you, Clara. Also, we want to welcome Marcus Debro, who is the assistant principal at Bloomington High School North. Marcus, good to have you with us. We have with us today visiting Rotarian Carolyn Fry from Sunrise Rotary Club. We also are pleased to have with us the president of the IU Bloomington Rotaract Club, Megan Gerhardt, who's joining us from the Hamilton Luger School, where she's working this summer. So Megan, great to have you. And good to see some Rotarians we haven't seen for a while. Bill Oates, who's back in Bloomington. Welcome, Bill. And Walt Kuhn. Walt, good to see you, and good to see everybody. Hope I didn't miss anybody. Back to you, Ashley.
Thanks. I think that covers it. Thank you for being here today. And thanks to our producers, Natalie Blaze, Michael Shermis, Sally Gaskell, and Aaron Davis for making all of this run so smoothly. And Bob Salzberg is reporting for us for the roundabout this week. We have a few birthdays. Alice Solman is May 20th and Tina Swanson, May 24th. Happy birthday. And one membership anniversary, Jim Sims has been a part of this club for 3 years. Thank you so much for being a part of the Rotary family. Quick announcement, I had put in the chat an RSVP for the Avers Pizza fundraiser for Teachers Warehouse. You can go to that site to RSVP for Thursday's 20% of their deliveries and pickup orders support the Teachers Warehouse this Thursday, the 20th. So please let them know if you plan, even if you're not sure if you are going to attend, let them know if you might. They want to know how much pizza to prepare. So 20% of all of those purchases go to our beloved Teachers Warehouse. So please join them for some pizza this Thursday. And now, without further ado, Jean Emery, would you introduce our speaker for today?
Thank you, President Ashley. I would love to. So good afternoon, Rotarians. It's my pleasure and honor to introduce our fellow Rotarian and guest speaker today. Glen attended his first Scout camp out with his family in 1972. It's almost 50 years ago. He was hooked on scouting. So in 1994, he began his scouting career as a direct district executive for Crossroads of America Council based in Indianapolis. And then he went to Kansas City to serve. And then in 2002, he took a position in Madison, Wisconsin as an assistant scout executive in the Four Lakes Council, Not done moving yet. He then moved to Milwaukee to serve as the Director of Field Service for the Milwaukee County Council. So in 2010 until today, Glenn moved his family, his wife Maria and daughter Gabrielle, to Bloomington, where he serves today as a Scout Executive in the Hoosier Trails Council. We are lucky and fortunate to have him in Bloomington. Now, in Glenn's free time, which I don't think he has much, he and his wife Maria, they enjoy hunting, home projects, which I've seen tons and tons of pictures on Facebook. They're renovating their home, which is a beautiful cabin out in the woods in Brown County. One unknown fact about Glenn is he was a member of the Artistic Roller Skating Hall of Fame. Now, as you can see from the picture, it was just a few short years ago. He still looks the same. He hasn't changed a bit. Hey, a proud graduate of Indiana University. Let's give a warm Rotary welcome to one of our own, Glen Steengberger. Welcome, Glenn.
Thank you, Jean. You did your homework to find that picture. That's impressive. We were blessed last year to do a trip of a lifetime, and it's kind of self-explanatory. I hope it's not wonky in the fact that it's pre-recorded, but it is kind of short on time. So we're going to get into this to try to have some time for questions at the end.
Greetings. My name is Glen Steengberger, and this is my 27th year of professional service to the Boy Scouts of America. And last summer, I applied for the Lilly Endowment Human Services Professional Renewal Program. Based upon my history of community service, I was awarded $10,000 to follow the footsteps of Baden Powell, Scouting's founder. My wife Maria and I began the new year by driving to Chicago, where we got to spend some time with family and friends prior to our flight departure the next day. We enjoyed an uneventful flight to Heathrow Airport in London, where we were picked up by our car service and headed for our rented flat on Gloucester Street. Having learned from previous travels, we dropped our gear and took a nap to combat the jet lag. Following our nap, we headed to Victoria Station to catch the hop-on, hop-off bus tour. There was a lot of traffic and the bus operations were not the best. So we decided to exit the tour for a snack prior to the historic pub tour that we had reserved. We then met up with Chris, the historic pub tour guide, and made our way around to 4 traditional English haunts: the Viaduct Tavern, the Black Friar, the Old Cheshire Cheese, and the George. The black peppercorn gin and tonic at the Viaduct was my favorite spirit of the afternoon. Having no correlation to the afternoon's pub crawl, I saw a fox crossing the street in London next to Twining's Tea Shop. It was using the crosswalk. Made me think of the song Werewolf of London. His hair was perfect. Feeling pretty jet lagged, we found a restaurant near our flat, the Marquis of Windsor, and enjoyed Scottish mussels and some more fish and chips. Bright and early, we fought for usage of the water closet in our flat and headed to the bus station. After getting the lay of things, I enjoyed a traditional English breakfast of baked beans and sausage. A brave choice for someone that was going to get on a bus tour for the rest of the day. After a couple of hours on the road, our first stop was Windsor Castle, the Queen's favorite digs. The history, the beauty, and excess were somewhat overwhelming, but we had a good sampling of this traditional landmark. A few more hours of transportation were in order. The magnificence of this world treasure was well displayed and cared for. I was unaware of the tongue and groove construction technique that was used to lock the stones together. The wind was biting, and although it did not overlook the ocean as it did in my mind, the open rolling landscape made it easy to imagine Stonehenge serving as a gathering beacon for ancient people. Many hours on the bus, a few days of intense walking and lack of sleep left me not appreciating this historic grounds like I know I should have. But there was a lot to see that any rolling or token fan would greatly appreciate. One more bus ride back to Victoria Station, and we enjoyed a much needed meal and beers at St. George Tavern. On this day, we saw magpie, red deer, the Baden Powell House in London, and mistletoe balls hanging from trees naturally. A lot of small bites of history squeezed into a small, tiring package. Time for some scouting. Off to GILWELL, happy land. Maria and I hit the tube early and made our way to the overground train transfer bound for Chingford. Running ahead of schedule, we decided that although it was cold, it would be appropriate to hike to GILWELL from the train station. When considering our normal hikes, this trek was not overstretching things. At least it wasn't on Google Maps, but I worked up a good sweat by the time that we arrived. We were then provided a historic tour of the home of Woodbadge, and admittedly, it was the first time that I connected to the emotional aspect of this journey. We saw GILWELL Field, the GILWELL Oak, Baden Powell's footprint, and many historic aspects of the beginning of scouting. One notable site was Hitler's gift to scouting, a World War II bomb crater that was turned into the GILWELL swimming hole. Hitler hated scouting, so this was an epic example of turning lemons into lemonade. Continuing our good fortune with trains, we made our connection and headed back to London. Becoming masters of the tube, we made our way to Piccadilly Station and visited platform 9 3/4 from Harry Potter, and then on to London for the shopping scene. This was an early morning, catching our Uber ride to the airport, where we continued our good luck with traveling, made it through check-in, and enjoyed our last English breakfast, but we were very, very, very tired. We put it all out there in the UK, now off to the Swiss Alps. Who does this? Swiss Air helped us to revive ourselves in time to catch our train from the Zurich airport to the train transfer station. I would like to note that Swiss Air was impressive in the lack of packaging waste that they produced through their food service, compared to other airlines that we have used. Their efforts to minimize plastics was admirable and set the environmental stage for the Switzerland leg of our expedition. We caught our train with a minute to spare, and we were on our way to KANDERSTEG, Switzerland. The travel gods were looking favorably upon us as we stumbled through every transition correctly. Let me point out that the English and Swiss that we encountered were very friendly, helpful, and accommodating. Due to our good travel fortune, we arrived in KANDERSTEG early and made our way to gather provisions and a travel snack prior to catching our shuttle bus to KANDERSTEG International Scout Center. We dropped our packs at the Chalet Hotel Adler and ordered a bottle of wine and a cheese fondue that ended up to be the best that we have ever enjoyed. With little time to spare, we slammed down our treat and hurried to catch the last ride to KANDERSTEG of the day. We checked into our scouting accommodations and were given an orientation to the facility by a young staffer, Richard. This evening, we had our first exposure to the KANDERSTEG staff, who are amazing. The team is comprised of volunteers that spend generally 3 to 6 months on site, working for room and board and the magic of scouting. Staff members were representing countries from all over the world, a true united nation of young people who were filled with the scouting spirit. We note that they were like Santa's elves, joyously completing their tasks to keep the center operational. Following dinner, we melted into our twin beds and rested our travel-weary bodies to re-energize for another day. A new day brings new enthusiasm. Following breakfast in the KANDERSTEG dining hall, I met with Jack Higgins, the relatively new KISC director. Having recently earned this position, Jack came to KANDERSTEG from the UK Scouts, where he served as the business development manager. It was interesting to learn of the center's initiatives, including their approach to recycling, staff development, non-traditional revenue development, and their work to gear up for their 100th anniversary. We hit the gift shop and made a respectable dent in the KISC inventory. You let a scouter loose in a trading post of such a facility, and the credit card is going to get a workout. We then were provided a tour of the center by Anne, a new staffer from Denmark. It was great to witness the behind-the-scenes work that makes KANDERSTEG function. Staffers are truly happy little elves filled with a scouting spirit, enjoying their time together, and it was contagious. We met up with our friend, the KANDERSTEG bus shuttle, and headed to the OESCHINENSEE gondola. With a little apprehension, we boarded our pod and began to ascend the cables. There were awesome views in all directions as our climb entered the snow-covered mountains of the Swiss Alps. An awesome lunch was enjoyed as I ordered veal at the Berg Hotel. We took in the scenery and took a lot of photos in an attempt to capture the beauty of this inspiring place. To make this presentation more timely, let me just say that we were caught in the Dubai airport for over 30 hours. In order to get the entire story, you can always purchase the book. During our ordeal, we did our best to communicate with the safari agent and scheduled Kenyan driver who was to pick us up at the Nairobi airport the day prior. So when we landed and cleared security, I was thrilled to find our driver, Peter, there waiting for us. My eyes were failing due to the lack of sleep, and darkness was setting in. Peter had a very dark tint on his automobile's windows, and at this point I could barely see, which was a benefit because he drove like a county fair demolition derby contestant for 3 hours to Nyeri, Kenya. Destination, the OUTSPAN. After a great night's sleep, we readied ourselves for breakfast in the dining room, in front of the fireplace where Baden Powell was sure to have enjoyed many meals. The resort was very old world, and traditional English manners and customs set the tone for our stay. Shortly thereafter, we met Benson, an OUTSPAN employee and the curator of the PAXTU Museum, the last home of Baden Powell. Benson introduced himself with the traditional left-handed shake used by scouts around the world. This is a carryover from knights who would shake left hands because it was closer to the heart. We made our way over to the museum, and Benson shared that he had 13 boys at home. I questioned in shock, 13? He said that he had collected them from around the streets, and now they live with him, and that he ran his house like a scout troop. We were then provided a tour of the small PAXTU Museum, which got its name because BP and Lady BP had a home in England that was named Pax Hill. So when he commissioned the construction of his Nyeri home at the OUTSPAN, it became PAX2 or PAXTU. Baden Powell lived the final 2 years of his life here at PAXTU, enjoying the climate and the people of Nyeri. There are several artifacts, including patio furniture that BP made himself. This museum enjoyed several scouting visitors over the years, which is evident due to the neckerchiefs and patches and scouting mementos from around the world that were displayed there. David, our driver, carted us to the Kenyan cemetery where we made a donation to help upkeep the site, and were then guided to the grave, overlooking Mount Kenya. Additionally, we saw the graves of several notable English of the time period, which were also buried on high ground. Native Africans were not allowed to be buried there, only English, a sign of the times. We then headed back to the OUTSPAN and listened to a part of an audiobook that I had been enjoying, My Adventures as a Spy by Robert Baden Powell. During this relaxation, I reflected on Benson's tour and his boys and the fact that the only items that the museum had to sell were the postcards that we picked up. Knowing that the Hoosier Trails Council has a patch contract, which we never reached the ceiling of in our annual ordering quantities, I believe that a PAXTU patch was in order. Upon return to the States, I designed and ordered 1,000 patches and had them shipped directly to Benson with a suggested retail price and instructions that the proceeds are to go to the museum or his scouts as whatever he deems most useful. We then met David again, who drove us to the Treetops, a sister resort to the OUTSPAN, for a potential sundowner safari, weather permitting. Upon our arrival, we learned that the recent rains would prevent us from going on safari. However, we were provided a tour of their lodging and saw our first safari animals. We were very excited to see an elephant, water buffaloes, warthogs, antelope, all taking in the watering hole. Little did we know that this sighting was nothing compared to what lied ahead, but it was an awesome sight. David then navigated the dirt roads out of the national park, and we encountered many school children that were walking home from school in their uniforms. They were all excited to see us and smiled and aggressively waved as we passed by. I had wished that I would have had a bag of candy to pass out. We were later told that children expected candy or money when they saw white people and how bad it was. If I would have had candy, they would have gotten it. David slowed for us to interact with the children, and I tried to high-five a girl as we passed, and she grabbed my hand to hold on to it, and she laughed with joy. Her hands were rougher than mine, and obviously no stranger to hard work. We awoke, slung our packs on our backs, and headed to the patio that adjoined the dining room for one last OUTSPAN meal. It was a great stay, and we were disappointed that our travel woes cheated us out of one night stay and a day of safari. However, it felt as if we had jammed a couple days of experience into our stay at Neary. We were then introduced to our driver escort, Tom, who would be with us for the remainder of our stay in Africa. Tom was around our age and had plenty of life experience to have formed his own opinions. He was not a fan of the Chinese, nor MASAI traditions, nor schedules, nor duties of his job. Tom was good in the bush, but a terror on the roads, but let's come back to that. Tom shared that he was from this area and still had family around, which we then worked on visiting them as part of our trip. He also shared that places that we would go would be dangerous or troublesome to tourists, and that he would negotiate on our behalf. This seemed like a good idea in theory. However, I am confident that he took a cut before any negotiations were transacted. During our time on the road, we encountered several Kenyan professional runners training for marathons, which was very exciting for Maria since she has run nearly 40 races herself and is not accustomed to passing Kenyans. We then crossed the equator and stopped at a roadside attraction and were demonstrated the natural forces of magnetic pull. Just that morning, Maria had commented that she wondered if it was true that toilets flush the opposite direction than they do at home. Well, here you go. Our moment of science showed that, yes, indeed, the pull is one way north of the equator and the other south of the equator, and there is no pull whatsoever when centered over the equator. As we neared the park entrance gate, we saw our first baboon. Seeing wildlife in the bush is much more exciting than an experience in a zoo, and we were like kids in a candy store. From the park gate to the cliff resort, we saw zebras, impala, waterbuck, water buffaloes, warthog, a pelican, egret, a martial eagle, baboon, velvet monkey, fish eagle, and a stork, just to name a few. We checked into the resort and our gear was taken to our tent, while we enjoyed a tremendous lunch of tiger prawn shrimp and a local white wine. It was time for us to do our best in settling into our camping accommodations. Technically, it was a tent, but it had the amenities of a Marriott. This was the nicest place that we stayed during our entire adventure. We only had one night to enjoy at the cliff, but I would gladly spend a week there in the future. Awesome staff, great food, unbelievable views, and did I mention the tent? Following a brief rest, we rejoined Tom for the evening safari. Our ambition was to see the Big Five during our time in the bush, and Tom delivered. On this excursion, we saw water buffalo, lions, a white rhino, and a leopard, in addition to jackals, hyenas, etc. We learned of the harsh penalties for killing any wild animals in Kenya, as well as the restrictions to cutting down trees. Tourism is the primary revenue generator. Thus, the government has placed stringent environmental laws to preserve the natural beauty of this wondrous place. After a great safari, we enjoyed dinner and sunset on Lake Nakuru, which made the Land Cruiser journey well worth it. During dinner, I struggled to put my finger on the emotions that I was feeling. I shared how much my mom would have enjoyed the safari, that she worked her entire life and dreamed of traveling with my dad. Her dreams would have to be realized through us, as we would have never made it on this trip if it had not been for the sacrifices that my parents made on behalf of the family. After a great night's rest, we packed up to get ready to get back onto the road. Maria was very excited over the turndown service from the cliff and the heated water bottle that they placed under the sheets at the foot of the bed. Although we hated to leave the tremendous accommodations overlooking the lake, it was time to endure another 7-hour Jeep ride to the Masai Mara National Park. After enduring a long Land Rover journey, we made it to our camp, the ENTIM Mara. Masai warriors greeted us and took our gear bags as we made our way to check in. The camp was within the national park, and there are no fences around the camp, so animals can wander into the camp. There was a constant presence by the warriors as they patrolled the perimeter, armed with clubs, Maasai knives, and spears. During dinner, our resort hostess came over to see if we needed anything. I inquired if there was someone that would be willing to run with Maria due to the lack of fences, lions and such, and the fact that she had never ran with Kenyans before. We got a funny look, but she said, "I will check and get back with you." During breakfast, Camilla, the hostess, stopped back by our table and shared that management agreed to allow Maria to run with a Kenyan, and that she would be her running partner. Giving the road some time to dry out, we hit our 5-hour safari at 9 a.m. Based upon some travel struggles the prior day, Tom had some work to do to win our favor over, and he did not disappoint on this morning. I was very thankful that our friend Katie Lane had suggested that I take her Canon camera, because on this day, I was like a National Geographic wildlife photographer. I spent as much time standing looking out of the lifted roof as I did sitting. This morning was the highlight of the entire trip for me. The lions were awesome as we watched the entire family interact for about a half an hour. We witnessed a cheetah hunting and giraffes strolling through the trees. During lunch, my ENTIM Mara man, Jimmy, asked about our afternoon plans, and I shared about Maria's running date and that we were going to go on a sundowner safari. Jimmy said, "Come see me before you go out." While Maria and Camilla ran back and forth within our encampment area, I opted to make use of the hammock that was on the edge of camp. I tried to nap, however, I kept hearing things in the bush and could not get those warthog chasing lions out of my head. So finally I gave up and went to have a cocktail with Suze. Meanwhile, the Maasai warriors were getting quite the kick out of Maria running around and the fact that she had lapped her running partner who was half her age. I am pretty sure that Camilla was allowed to run to accommodate our stay, but she received instructions to let Maria win to make her feel better. We cleaned up and headed out for our evening adventure. Jimmy was there as promised and presented a bag containing 2 wrapped glasses and a chilled bottle of champagne. We were pretty tired from all the day's excitement, but did a 2-hour game drive, which culminated in finding our lions again, which were napping in the wind as it blew the golden grasses of the Serengeti around them. Tom pulled the Land Cruiser close to the slumbering cats and shut off the motor. We popped a cork and enjoyed champagne with the lions. Not a bad day. Early Friday morning, we met Tom and braced ourselves for the journey out of the Masai Mara National Park. It should have taken us a little more than an hour to reach the gates, but it took us more than 2 hours. However, we did not get stuck, nor did we slide out of control. Prior to leaving the park, we paid a visit to a Maasai village. This was traditional, but tourism was definitely one of their revenue streams. Villagers danced with us, showed us their incredible jumping capabilities, and then welcomed us into their village enclosure. During the night, their cattle is brought inside the fence with them to be protected from predators. Thus, cow dung is everywhere. We then toured a dung hut that was darker inside than one could imagine. They keep a fire burning so that the smoke keeps the flies outside. Remember that it had rained the night before, and there were more flies than you can imagine. The bugs were maddening to us, but they did not seem to faze the Maasai. They all seemed very happy. However, it left me with a greater appreciation for all the blessings in my life. We then visited their market and purchased another $100 worth of African trinkets. With our boots caked in dung, we loaded back into the Land Cruiser, bound for the Nairobi airport. Friendship is like a boomerang. You give out your friendship to another chap, and then more, and they give you their friendship in return. So your original friendship and goodwill, as it goes on to others, increases in strength and brings back this goodwill to you in return, just as the boomerang comes back to its thrower. Lord Robert Baden Powell. Thanks to my wife Maria for planning this trip And thanks to my staff for holding things together while we were away. Also, thank you to the Lilly Endowment and the Central Indiana United Way for making this adventure possible. And thank you for listening to my tale, following in the footsteps of Baden Powell.
All right, there you go. I
That was
seem to have,
awesome, Glenn.
I've lost video here, so. Happy to address any questions. I would like to share that as a piece of this trip. We took over 1,000 photographs, and I whittled this show down from something much larger to get within our time constraints today. But we did produce a book that is a wonderful memory from the trip. And anyone who's interested in the book, we give those out as a thank you to contributors to Scouting who support the cost of one Scout for a year. So I would love to share a book with you if anyone's interested. Did I lose you?
Does anyone have any questions?
There we go.
There you are.
Perfect.
Tim Jessen?
Yes, Glenn, this is a friendly question, and I really appreciated all those places you went to. I've been to part of Africa and London, but I want to ask you a question about Scouting right now.
Sure.
A friend of mine a number of years ago said that the Boy Scouts had 3 problems, and he summarized it this way. He said it's gays, girls, and God. And how did you make it through this last year with the pandemic and all the other controversies that have been afflicting the Boy Scouts of America in recent years? I just would like to know how you found the resources to deal with these issues which trouble us all from time to time.
Appreciate it, Tim. I know you're a strong Scouting supporter, so thank you for that question. I have heard those same issues in the past. I personally wouldn't say that they're technically problems, but they have been issues for Scouting to address over the years. First of all, we are fully inclusive, so it doesn't matter what your sexual orientation is at this point. So we are welcoming to all. A couple of years ago, we did open up all of our programs, although we've served females for over 50 years in our movement here in the States. We've completely opened all of our programs up. And the last one is, you stated, is God. We do believe that in order for a person to achieve their full potential, that they have to believe in something beyond themselves. So we don't say what that has to be. It could be Mother Nature, or it could be Jesus Christ. But we do believe in order for a person to reach their full potential that they do have to have a belief in a higher being. It has been a tough year. We are working hard to emerge from bankruptcy right now. I've actually put this presentation together kind of as a coming out party, if you will, as we emerge from bankruptcy. I'd love to get out and do a road show to service clubs and share with people that Scouting is still alive and well in the United States and in the world, and that our society needs Scouting now more than ever.
Thank you. An excellent answer. Thank you so much.
I'm curious what you think Lord Baden-Powell would have said about the admission of girls to Boy Scouts.
Well, I think that he would have been very comfortable with it. Scouting is, we've not divided worldwide Scouting into Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. That only happened in the United States. So I think he would have been very comfortable with it. In fact, his wife, Lady Baden-Powell, started the Girl Guides, and which was a, no pun intended, but sister program. And they were all about serving as many kids as possible.
Thank you.
And being a father of a young lady who was in our programs, she's very upset now that she didn't have the chance to become an Eagle Scout until now, because she would have been a great Eagle This year, we welcomed our first class female Eagle Scouts in the Hoosier Trails Council. So I'm really proud of that.
Glenn, can you talk to us a little bit about the scope of your position? How many different units, how many counties, what's the geographical area that you cover?
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, we cover 18 counties in South Central Indiana. I'll note that our territory is some of the poorest counties in the state. So it becomes a challenge in order for us to have outreach programs. We really got to drill down into the communities. We are lean and mean. I did not lay off anybody through the pandemic. We did have some positions that people left on their own accord, and we didn't fill those. So we are trying to build back. It has been a challenge for us, quite frankly, this year. We've lost 40% of our membership through rechartering. So we are excited to be offering in-person summer camp next month, and we are sold out for that. So that is something to be proud of. And we've got plans to do that in a COVID safe manner and work on rebuilding our programs this summer and fall.
Thank you, Glenn.
Hey, Glenn, I have a question for you. It was great to see that you spent some time in Kenya, having been where you are now here in the States, but also experiencing the UK some, and then Kenya. How did it change your view of scouting as an international experience?
Well, that's a great question. I went looking to get inspired. I've been at this for a couple of decades, and it's easy to get tired and jaded dealing with some of the problems that I deal with on a daily basis. So I was looking to get reinvigorated. One of the things that I came away from appreciating that we needed to have new revenue generation for our council. And I challenged our board to come up with a $100,000 idea last year that we could work into our budget to give us some cushion every year. One of our board members is Jeff Westlich from Cardinal Spirits here in town. And Jeff came up with the idea during the pandemic that we sold hand sanitizer. So it was a community service, and it also generated revenue. So directly out of the talking to Jack Higgins and how they would think outside of the norms in raising funds, we birthed that idea. Also, we have some environmental initiatives that we're dying to kick off from what I learned in our time in Switzerland, and we'll be rolling that out this fall.
That's great. Thank you.
All right, Glenn, do you have a few moments to stay after we close?
Happy to stay. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Wonderful program, and thank you for sharing all of that. I'm sure you could have spoken for hours. We appreciate you fitting it in for our short time period today. All right. In honor of your presentation, we'll be making a donation to Monroe County United Ministries.
Great.
And Sally, will you tell us about next week's program?
Yes, next week is a club forum. It's Ashley's last, so let's all come out and support her. She looked surprised. Ha ha. We're going to be talking about committees and how to become a more engaged Rotarian. So please join us.
Thank you. And let's have our four-way test and recite this together to close our meeting. Of the things we think, say, or do. First,
is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
And fifth, is it fun? Ding! All right, that's the end of our program for today. And does anyone